looking forward to two huge Game 6s out west tonight, and then tomorrow night, the Knicks and Pacers in Game 6 in Indiana a week ago on Friday night, so it'll be exactly a week. These teams played a classic. That ended the close game portion of this series. The first three games of this series went right down to the final minute. Then we got a blowout one way in Game 4, a blowout the other way in Game 5. All the pressure on Indy at home to win Game 6. I'm going to ask you the most basic question I can think of. Tim Legler, who is the one player who will most determine which team wins Game 6 tomorrow night in Indiana?
I'm going to go with Tyrese Halliburton, and it's either way. If Tyrese Halliburton is quiet, as he has been in 2 games in this series, then the Pacers are going to go home in 6 games. If Tyrese Halliburton has a big impact in this game, it's number one, it's great for their offense because he's capable of having a 20 to 30 point game. But more importantly, if Tyrese Halliburton is somebody we're talking a lot about tonight and tomorrow, it's because the Pacers controlled their defensive glass and they were able to get outlet passes to this guy to get him out in the open floor and get him some space so he can operate. What the Knicks did to them in Madison Square Garden the other night completely negated his ability to play to his strength, which is get out in the open floor and make guys better. So Tyrese Halliburton, to me, is the barometer for this game.
The difference in Game 5 was the Knicks took 101 shots in 48 minutes. It's unheard of. And that feels, if I'm Rick Carlisle, that feels like the easiest thing to fix. Like, strategies are not easy to fix. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, guys, they're beating you to every loose ball. They're just competing harder than you are right now. That felt more like, well, as much like an effort thing
Carlisle
as it felt like anything else.
Cold-blooded effort. That's what he called it, to get a basketball. That's what Carlisle called it.
Well, that's why my answer would have been I would have combined 2 players into Josh Hartenstein. Somebody needs to box out Josh Hartenstein because nobody's boxing him out. But look, it's not that easy because Brunson is tearing them apart no matter who they put on him. And when you start putting 2 guys on him, that's fewer guys on the glass. Everything has a ripple effect. What you do to Brunson affects your rebounding, and the Pacers' margin for error against my guy Josh Hartenstein on the glass is not very big.
The Frankenstein of it all, right? Look, I think on the Knicks side, it's Dante DiVincenzo. He had a big Game 6 to close out, on the road to close out the Sixers. He has to have a big game. He shot the ball very well, by the way, in Game 3 in Indiana, so he should be comfortable there. That's important, and there's a couple of reasons why. They want to finish this thing out. They don't want a Game 7 for several reasons. First of all, you want to get it over with. But what you're doing tonight as a Knicks fan is you're rooting for Minnesota. You want to see a Game 7 in that series. Why? Because it'll be on Sunday, which would push no matter what happens. And if the Knicks finish this in 6, they wouldn't play till Tuesday. So it's a big deal to move that Game 1 to Tuesday if you get this over with, but there has to be a Game 7 in that series to do it.
Yeah, there has to be a game on Sunday.
Yes.
That's the way these things work, is we're guaranteed a game on Sunday. So if there isn't one in the West, then the Knicks...
So you're rooting for Minnesota.
The Knicks would have to play that day, be it the Pacers or at Boston. The other piece of it is, my old friend Jalen used to tell me all the time, Tim Legler, and you would understand this better than anybody, your role players are always going to play better at home. The Knicks basically don't have any role players left. They're playing everybody who is healthy. The Pacers have a bunch of guys, and should we expect them all to play better tomorrow night than they've played in the Garden?
Well, there's no question. Look, what happened the other night was just a barrage at the start of that game. They got hit with energy, emotion. Jalen Brunson got loose again on them, set the tone for the entire night. I don't think that was indicative of how this series has been played. Yes, those guys to show up in a bigger way. TJ McConnell has had as much of an impact as a backup point guard on this series as any you will see in any series. He was kind of quiet the other night too because the game got out of hand and you didn't notice TJ McConnell as much. TJ McConnell is going to be very, very important. Miles Turner is going to be critical. We still haven't seen a real takeover moment out of Pascal Siakam, which is what you brought him in here to do. The guy's an NBA champion. So there's a lot there for the Pacers to grab that you didn't see the other night. A lot more upside, I think, for their team. It won't be easy, and I will not be shocked if the Knicks win this game, but I think the way the series has gone and how dramatically different Indiana has been at home, I like their chances to force this to a Game 7 on Sunday.
So where does all of this put us as of right this minute? I'm glad you asked. The Celtics, if you go on ESPN Bet, are the favorites to win the NBA championship right now. They're at minus 130. The defending champs are just behind them at plus 210. The Mavericks are at plus 900. The Timberwolves, the Thunder, and the Knicks are all plus 2,000 to win it all, and you see the Pacers bringing up the rear. So there's a show, it's a very popular show. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it. It's called The Pivot. I can't remember who hosts it now. But with apologies to our friend Michael Rubin at Fanatics, we are going to do our own version of the pivot right here. My two football guys are going to pivot in and do some basketball here because no one watches more games than they do. No one is more into it than they are. And D. Wood, again, I apologize. You can't pick the Lakers because they're already out. Ryan Clark, if you had to, you're bouncing this off all our basketball guys. You got to bet your palatial estate on one team who's going to win the NBA championship. Right now, who is it?
One I don't bet, but the Boston Celtics. You think about the Boston Celtics and what they've been able to accomplish without Kristaps Porzingis in the playoffs. And if you read all the things they say about him, is he's going to be on his way back. We've watched Al Horford and picking up minutes, play better as the playoffs have gone along. And at some point, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have to get it done. I've also seen the maturity and the maturation process of head coach Joe Mazzulla. Right? He's approaching these playoffs, and you can tell the way his serious approach is in the most important minutes. When it's time to win, he said, some things we can't say. He says you got to have some big ones, right? And show up in those times. And I think that sort of approach, that sort of makes you almost feel that Greg Popovich, that we ain't come here to play, we've come here to win.
Well, so D. Wood, let me throw that at you before I get your pick on this. Draymond Green said on TV last night, it's championship or bust for the Celtics. No one cares how many games they've won at this point. Those two that he just mentioned, they've won more games over the last 5 years than any other duo in the NBA, but they don't have the ring to show for it, so it doesn't matter. Is it championship or failure for the Celtics, in your opinion?
I don't think it's failure if they play the Nuggets and lose. I don't think it's failure. This is a team that, quite honestly, has been in this championship or bust window for quite some time. That duo has been together for a long time. It seems like they've had a team, a nucleus together that's been championship caliber for some years. So I think, listen, if they don't reach the championship round, then it's beyond failure. But if they go play the Nuggets, who's obviously won the NBA championship last year, and they fall short, I don't look at it as a failure.
Can I ask the basketball guy something?
Go.
Right? Charles Barkley's career is not a failure. Do we count it not a failure because he played with Michael Jordan? Right? No, the Boston Celtics have to win. I don't care who Nikola Jokic is.
I care. I care.
It's the joke.
He's the best guy.
But it's the joke of the last 30 years of the NBA is that if you didn't win a championship, you didn't have the great career. They tease Barkley about it all the time. It's the famous story of the Dream Team when it was Michael Jordan and I forget who else they were talking about, Larry Bird. They were talking about championships, and Barkley had said something. They're like, no, you can't have this. You can't be in this conversation. So that is something that these players carry with them throughout their career.
The other part of it, though, and Legler, I'll throw this out to you. It's one thing if you lose to Jokic. It's another thing last year losing at home in a Game 7 to a Miami team they were definitively better than and getting blown out in that Game 7.
Tatum did get hurt in the first 30 seconds of that game.
Okay, I understand that, but they also were losing 3-0 in that series.
No
In that situation in the first place.
The most embarrassing part of it.
They've had a lot of opportunities, Tim, and I raised it earlier this morning, and I will say it in reaction to what RC just said. If not now, when? For Boston, they have basically the Eastern Conference has rolled out a red carpet for the Celtics to get to the finals.
Yeah, I think it's amazing the way people kind of change their perspective because of the way Jokic looks right now and the Nuggets coming back in that series. This team had the best starting five in basketball this year, the Boston Celtics. They won 64 games. They went out and they added two guys in Holiday and Porzingis that are massive difference makers defensively and a significant upgrade over what they had offensively. Yes, it's a failure if this team doesn't win a championship. They didn't sign Porzingis and Holiday. They didn't bring those guys in with the thought process being, oh, thank goodness, now we can really battle the Nuggets in 6 games and lose in the finals. That's not what they brought those guys in for. They brought them in to win a championship, flat out. So to your point, the Eastern Conference path has never been easier for the Boston Celtics. So there's almost a guarantee they're going to end up in the finals, but that's not what it's about. It's about getting it done. They're going to have home court advantage in that series no matter who they play. You've got to get this thing across the finish line. It's not going to get easier going forward for Boston. It's going to get more difficult. The East won't look like this next year, assuming some of these guys stay healthy, and the West is going to be better. This is the opportunity for Boston. Now, the one out they will have is if Porzingis just doesn't play. If he doesn't play or he's just severely limited, I guess then they'd have a little bit of a built-in excuse as to why they didn't get it done. But for me, yeah, it's a failure when you have this 4 games with that starting lineup and you don't win a title.
Quick final word on this, because D Wood, you don't have them winning anyway, right? I asked you.
I have the Nuggets. I have the Nuggets winning because they have the best player. I think Jamal Murray is getting healthier. You've seen it out there in the field. And listen, the one thing about the Nuggets that I love, when it's crunch time, in situational spots, they play their best ball. And I don't know if the Celtics up here are mentally tough enough to match what the Denver Nuggets going to bring, especially when you got to execute at the end.
You picked the heavy guy to win. That's shocking.
I mean, no, wait a minute, hold on. But the Celtics had the best record in the league this year.
I don't know what Legs is talking about changing perception, because I know this. The Nuggets and the Celtics played twice this season, and the Nuggets won both games, and all the talk after those games were, I guess they reminded us who the best team in the NBA is. If you lose to the best team in the NBA, it's not a colossal failure.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Think I'm gonna try to wear, I pull up all brains. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA on the ESPN.